Part 18. Sky Coffin. Author, Ching Nian Wanba. Chapter 171. Wu 11 covered his fists and shouted, "This guy's body is like a steel plate," etc. I seem to have thought of something. At this moment, Huaxiu's cold eyes swept over each of us. A chill spread from the bottom of my heart. Anyone who disturbs my husband's practice deserves to die. While Huaxiu was talking, I secretly approached Wu 11 and handed something into his hand. Wu 11 was stunned for a moment and looked at me. I nodded to him. He wanted to ask something else, but Huaxiu didn't give us this chance. She rushed towards us again, and was in front of me in an instant. I subconsciously raised my Jingxiao to resist. At this moment, Huaxiu jumped up on the spot. I took a closer look and found out that it was Ruoheng who used a long whip to attack Huaxiu's legs. Huaxiu stood firm, and I struck towards her chest with one thrust. Huaxiu did not dodge, he only heard a sonorous sound, and the startling sky pierced Huaxiu's chest solidly. But a strange thing happened. Jingxiao, with the blessing of the 9 layers Thunderju, couldn't even harm Huaxiu's clothes. How is this going? Huaxiu stretched out his slender hand, grabbed Jingxiao and then exerted a slight force, and the sound of splintering wood could be heard in the air. I looked horrified. If this continued, Jingxiao would have to be broken by her. At this critical moment, Wu 11 took action. He was extremely fast and came to Huaxiu in an instant. He waved his right hand and instantly distanced himself from Huaxiu. The moment Wu 11 left my sight, I clearly saw an extra talisman on Huaxiu's forehead. That is a black talisman, it is the corpse control talisman that Su Tianxian gave to me. I let go of Jingxiao, kneaded the formula with both hands, muttered something in my mouth, and then gave a loud shout. Control. Huaxiu stiffened and let go of Jingxiao's right hand. I let out a long sigh of relief. Success. What I just gave to Wu 11 is the corpse control talisman. Because the Huaxiu in front of him is not a ghost or a resentful spirit, but a zombie. Huaxiu was afraid of Tao Mu, and his body was as stiff as an iron plate. If it were a fierce ghost, it would be impossible to do this. Although I don't know why Huaxiu grabbed Jingxiao with his bare hands just now. The coldness and killing intent in Huaxiu's beautiful eyes are intertwined, and just one look can make me feel endless terror. I controlled Huaxiu to come to the sarcophagus and said, "Look, your husband has left, and what you have been insisting on has been answered." I originally thought that Huaxiu looked shocked or confused. But she kept staring at me, the killing intent in her eyes not diminishing at all. Huaxiu's reaction gave me a bad feeling. Is it possible? Just at this time, the dull sound of footsteps came from the tomb passage. I screamed in my heart, "Oh no! Tap tap tap!" The sound of footsteps was dull and extremely oppressive, and every time it sounded, it made my heart tremble. Apart from the sound of footsteps, there was also the sound of armor shaking from the other side of the tomb passage. Ruoheng and Wu 11 also looked shocked. The footsteps got closer and closer, and I broke out in cold sweat. After a moment, a man wearing armor and a sword at his waist appeared in front of me. The man has a stern face, starry eyebrows and sharp eyes, a tall and slender figure yet rugged, and a majestic appearance. He is like an eagle in the dark night, cold, aloof and powerful, and his loneliness exudes a strength that lords over the world. He stopped, glanced at everyone, and finally focused on me. My body froze instantly, my palms were sweating, and my scalp on the solace of my feet was numb. His eyes made me feel scared, as if he could swallow me up at any time. Sky Coffin. Author, Ching Nian Wanba. Chapter 172. The most feared thing happened. One Kakyu has already forced us into a desperate situation, and now here comes another general who is even more powerful than Kakyu. This is how to do. General Huo stared at me closely with his tiger eyes. His eyes kept changing, from cold at first, to confusion, to shock, and finally to respect. This change in eyes is puzzling to me. You still showed up. This title made everyone present froze in place. Wu 11 poked me with her elbow and asked, "Do you know him?" I shook my head. General Huo walked towards me. I felt like I was facing a formidable enemy and held my hands tightly in fear. He was slightly startled when he saw my expression, then shook his head repeatedly and said to himself, "Not enough. Not enough. There's still a long way to go." General Huo drew out the sword from his waist and slashed directly at me. I was shocked, and quickly used Jingxiao to block. The long sword collided with the wooden sword, and the powerful impact made me step back. Before I could take a breath, a cold light flashed out of the corner of my eye, and I hurriedly raised the sky. With a clang, I was knocked back several steps. "Not enough. Not enough. You are too weak now." General Huo kept talking to himself. I didn't feel any killing intent in him, which meant that he didn't want to kill me, he was just testing. But what General Huo said next made me feel like I had fallen into an ice cave. "If it's only to this extent, then you'd better die." As he said that, the sword struck me again. I hastily accepted the challenge, and this time, I felt a strong murderous aura in General Huo's body. This murderous aura alone is enough to make my limbs tremble, making me unable to lift my sword. I held Jingxiao tightly, the sweat on my palm slowly sliding down my fingers. General Huo's killing intent became stronger and stronger. The fear I was facing at this moment was at its peak. I wanted to pick up the sword and fight again, but found that my hands could not make any movement due to fear. "What? Did you stop here?" General Huo's tone was full of joking. Looking at General Huo approaching me, my heart beat faster, my whole body trembled, my head was in chaos, and big beads of sweat rolled down my forehead. "Move. Lu Su. Get moving. Otherwise you will die." I kept struggling in my heart. At this moment, I truly realized what true strength suppression means. In front of General Huo, I am like an ant. He only needs one finger to crush me to death. I was breathing heavily because of General Huo's fierce murderous aura and strong pressure. "Ah!" I roared and activated the power of the Ghost Seal and the Soul-Stealing Blood Hand at the same time. Scarlet blood spread down my arm and soon covered my entire right arm. Even Jingxiao cannot avoid being eroded by blood. I raised my sword and rushed towards General Huo. A trace of surprise flashed in General Huo's eyes. I raised the blood-wrapped Jingxiao in my hand and stabbed it towards General Huo. General Huo did not dodge and resisted my attack. Poof! The tip of Jingxiao's sword penetrated General Huo's armor and sank into his chest, but it only penetrated a few centimeters. I roared loudly and pushed Jingxiao with all my strength, but I couldn't move forward at all. General Huo's voice rang in my ears again. "I didn't expect you to take back the bloody hand from Qin Jiangxing so quickly. Not bad." As soon as I finished speaking, the familiar pain hit me again. My whole body twitched and I instantly collapsed to the ground. The evil spirit comes back. When General Huo saw this scene, his admiring eyes disappeared and were replaced by endless killing intent. "It seems I was wrong, so you'd better go die." I raised my head and looked at General Huo, only to see him raising the sword in his hand and slashing at me. At this critical moment, a familiar figure stood in front of me. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qingnian Wanbao. Chapter 173. Enough. Su Tianxuan's cold voice reached my ears. "Master!" I shouted with difficulty. Su Tianxian turned around, her beautiful eyes full of distress. "Sorry, I'm late. Just one sentence almost moved me to tears. After Su Tianqian said this, he confronted General Huo. General Huo narrowed his eyes and looked at Su Tianqian. Su Tianqian looked at General Huo with plain eyes. Little girl, are you going to stand up for him? Su Tianqian nodded and said nothing. General Huo clenched his sword, pointed it at Su Tianqian, and said coldly, no one I want to kill has ever left alive. Su Tianqian opened her red lips and said slowly, you can give it a try. As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere instantly dropped to freezing point. The two were confronting each other quietly like this, as if their swords were about to become tense at any moment. Su Tianqian raised her slender white jade hands, formed a seal, and said, if I guessed correctly, you have just recovered this body and your strength has not yet been restored. If you want to fight, I will accompany you. General Huo's expression changed slightly when he saw the seal on Su Tianxuan's right hand. At this time, Xia 11 was worried about my comfort and hurriedly came to my side and helped me up regardless of the current situation. General Huo was slightly startled when he saw Xia 11. Qin Jiangxing. After hearing this, Su Tianqian nodded and said, yes, she is Qing Yangxing. General Huo looked around, and finally set his sights on the soul coffin. His cold expression softened somewhat. Su Tianqian continued, I know what you are thinking, but the time is not yet ripe. Give him some time and he will convince you. When General Huo heard this, he thought for a moment and took back the sword in his hand. With a clang, the sword was sheathed. Okay, I'll give him a period of time. During this period, I will test his strength from time to time. If he fails to meet the standards, don't blame me for being ruthless. Su Tianqian nodded lightly. General Huo stepped forward and walked towards the tomb passage. At this moment, Hua Xiu shouted at General Huo's back, husband. Don't abandon me again. Because I was attacked by evil spirits, the corpse control talisman also lost its original effect. General Huo stopped for a moment and walked out of the main tomb without looking back. When Hua Xiu saw this scene, his body went limp, he collapsed on the ground, and burst into tears. Su Tianqian came to my side and gently covered my forehead with his palm. The pain of the evil spirit entering his body disappeared instantly, and Su Tianxuan's face became paler. I looked at Su Tianqian, lowered my head and said, Master, I'm sorry. I feel really guilty, and I wanted to solve these things myself. But in the end, let Su Tianqian end it? Su Tianqian looked at me quietly and said, you have done a good job. I raised my head and looked into Su Tianxuan's eyes. Her eyes were full of tenderness. Ruo Hung quickly gathered around and said in surprise, Master Tianqian. You are here. If you don't come, we will all die here. Wu 11 was cursing on the side. Master, I have never seen such a terrifying existence in my whole life. Su Tianqian looked at Hua Xiu who was squatting on the ground crying, hesitated for a moment, then took steps toward her. Hua Xiu was completely devastated at this moment, and her endless waiting was rewarded by her husband's ruthless abandonment. Su Tianqian looked at Hua Xiu and said slowly, things and people have changed, and everything has come to an end. The person you are waiting for may not come back. Hua Xiu raised her face covered with tears. At this moment, I felt as if my heart had been severely touched, and I felt inexplicably distressed for Hua Xiu. Why? Hua Xiu asked. Su Tianqian let out a long sigh and replied, the cycle of cause and effect, the reincarnation of heaven, how many people can truly achieve reincarnation? After hearing these words, Hua Xiu froze on the spot for a moment. The next moment, she screamed at me, why can he? Why? Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 174. Seeing Hua Xiu like this made me feel distressed for no reason. I opened my mouth subconsciously, but no words came out. I have a strange feeling about Hanakyo. It was as if we had known each other for a long time. Su Tianqian stretched out his hand to Huashiu and said, if you want to know the answer, why don't you follow him? After all, you and him. Su Tianqian did not continue speaking, thinking that the next words could not be leaked. Huashiu looked at Su Tianxuan's outstretched hand and was stunned for a long time. She hesitated and slowly stretched out her hand, and then immediately retracted it. I don't want it. I don't want to see him again. Not in this life. Huashiu's words were full of deep complaints, as if I had really done something unjust to her. Su Tianqian sighed slightly and continued to persuade, you don't know what he means to your husband, right? So, if you want to get your husband back, you can only stay by his side. Huashiu fell into silence. After a moment, she stretched out her hand again, and then held Su Tianxuan's hand tightly. Wu 11 whispered in my ear, Lu Su, do you think this zombie is strange? Just now he looked fierce, but now he has turned into such a little woman. Wu 11 was right. Huashiu now looked like an abandoned little woman, helpless and miserable. The appearance of Su Tianqian completely reversed the situation here. She said to Wu 11, please place these two coffins in the center of the main tomb chamber. Wu 11 was flattered by Su Tianxuan's polite words. He nodded repeatedly and even lowered his voice a bit. Okay, Master Tianqian. I suddenly thought of those boys and girls, and I told Su Tianqian about it. After hearing this, Su Tianqian nodded and said to me, in that case, you can take her there. I need to decorate here a little. I was stunned for a moment. From what Su Tianqian said, it seemed like she didn't want to go with me. Master, if I take her alone, I'm afraid. Su Tianqian waved her hand and said, it doesn't matter, you can rest assured. Although she hates you, she can't hurt you. It's impossible to hurt me. You almost killed me just now. Su Tianqian took out a talisman from his pocket and handed it to me, saying, this talisman is called the 12-turn soul gathering talisman. With this talisman, the souls of those children will be separated from the locust tree, and then can be reincarnated. I looked at the talisman in my hand and looked overjoyed. I came to Huashiu, who was standing aside blankly, as if thinking about something. I hesitated and said, I have something to tell you. Huashiu came back to his senses, looked at me, and then said in a cold voice, if you have anything to say, please tell me. I told Huashiu about the boy and girl. The latter trembled after hearing this, and then a look of sadness appeared in her beautiful eyes. Take me there. I nodded and took Huashiu to where the boys and girls were. A moment later, just when Huashiu and I were about to arrive there, Huashiu stopped. I looked at her and saw that her face was full of sadness and confusion. I saw what she was thinking and said, let's go, they have been waiting for you. Huashiu looked at me and said hesitantly, I hurt them, I have no shame to see them again. I sighed and continued to persuade, they regard you as their mother and the only light in their gloomy lives? See them for the last time, they will disappear soon. Huashiu still refused to move forward. Helpless, I could only come to the empty underground space by myself. As soon as I appeared, the boys and girls all started asking, Sir, have you seen the lady? Yes. Sir, have you seen Madam? She must still be in the tomb, right? The bodies of these boys and girls began to rot, and a disgusting rancid smell filled the entire space. Their voices were also weak, as if they were about to dissipate at any moment. I nodded and said to them, she is here, but she doesn't want to see you. As soon as these words came out, the boys and girls instantly became excited. Why? Why doesn't Madam want to see us? Yes. Did we do something wrong? If it's because we did something wrong, we are willing to apologize to Madam. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 175. The voices of boys and girls are not loud, but I believe Hwashiu can definitely hear them. Sure enough, Hwashiu walked out of the tomb passage. When the boys and girls saw Hwashiu, they all shouted in surprise, "Madam! You are finally willing to come see us." Hwashiu's red lips were slightly open, but she didn't say a word. I met them on the side and said, "Goodbye properly, they will turn around and reincarnate." Hwashiu nodded, and the first word he spoke was an apology. "Children, I'm sorry that you have to suffer like this because of me." The boys and girls replied, "Madam, don't say that, if it weren't for you, we would have died long ago." "Yes. Madam, we don't blame you. If you want to blame it, you have to blame the alchemist." "That's right. Madam, you are not only a princess, you are also our relative." When I heard the word princess, I was slightly startled. Hwashiu is actually a princess of a country? But if you think about it carefully, it would be difficult for non-princes and nobles to find so many boys and girls in ancient times. What follows is Hwashiu's confession to these poor and kind-hearted children. Hwashiu at this moment is less ominous and vicious than when they first met, and more gentle. This is probably what Hwashiu really looks like. Hwashiu's conversation with the children was really heartwarming. Full of laughter, if these children were born in modern times, they would definitely have a better life. Finally, with tears in her eyes, Hwashiu bowed deeply to all the children and choked up, "Children, I'm sorry. If I had noticed this earlier, you wouldn't have suffered like this. Really very sorry." The children said one after another, "Madam, this matter is not your fault. There is no need for you to take everything on yourself. Yes. We all know that all this is the fault of that vicious alchemist. If we want to hate, it's not you, but that alchemist." Hwashiu bit her red lips and said, "But, you did die because of me." The children still comforted Hwashiu. And through their conversations, I was able to learn some things. All this was not done by Hwashiu, but by the alchemist who gave Hwashiu advice. Hwashiu wanted to resurrect General Huo, and then Hwashiu left the matter to the alchemist. It wasn't until the last moment that Hwashiu knew that the alchemist was going to sacrifice all his children. Because she was unwilling to sacrifice these children. However, the alchemist agreed verbally, but secretly killed all these children. When Hwashiu knew this, it was already too late. Things have happened and cannot be changed. Under the alchemist's temptation, Hwashiu acquiesced to the alchemist's cruel behavior. And she was transformed into a zombie by the alchemist, staying by her lover's side forever. Seeing that the time was almost up, I said, "Let's let these children reincarnate. If we continue, I'm afraid they will really lose their souls." Hwashiu looked at me in surprise when he heard the words reincarnation. I smiled at her and took out the 12-turn soul-gathering talisman that Su Tianxian gave me. I held the talisman, muttered something in my mouth, and finally threw it into the sky. A golden light burst out from the talisman, illuminating the empty environment here. I can clearly see the souls of these children being pulled away from their roots and finally merged into their bodies. The golden light lasted for a full minute. The golden light dissipated, and the children also broke free from the confinement of the big locust tree. I summoned the gates of Hades. The gate to the underworld opened, and the biting wind poured out from inside. These children lined up and walked into the gate of the underworld one by one. When they pass by me and Hwashiu, they will bow to me and say thank you, and they will also thank Hwashiu for his upbringing. After a while, the surroundings returned to deathly silence. Hwashiu looked at me with complicated eyes and hesitated to speak. "You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanba. Chapter 176. Finally she said something that didn't make any sense. You have changed. Even so, I will not forgive you. Why Huashiu said such a thing, I don't know. If I have to explain it, it comes down to the fate of reincarnation. Things here have been resolved. Huashiu and I returned to the main tomb chamber. General Huo's sarcophagus has been moved out, and the sole coffin and the double coffin have been placed in the middle of the main tomb. An unknown magic circle is painted on the ground, and 9 candles are placed on the magic circle. Su Tianxian didn't know what she was busy with in front of the 2 coffins. Ruo Heng and Wu 11 were helping. When Xia 11 saw me coming back, she quickly came to my side and asked, Lu Su, are you okay? I nodded and said, it's okay. Huashiu walked straight past me, and then came to the sarcophagus in a daze. Xia 11 looked at Huashiu's back and said, Lu Su, do you feel that? She looks very similar to you. I was slightly stunned, but I didn't pay attention to this. Yeah. Xia 11 nodded seriously and said with certainty, you two look somewhat similar. I laughed and teased why Xia 11 paid so much attention to my appearance. Xia 11 stuttered for a long time and couldn't explain what was going on. In the end, Xia 11 blushed and ran away in a hurry. About 5 minutes later, Su Tianxian called Xia 11 and I to her and said that she had something to tell the 2 of us. Su Tianxian said to the 2 of us very seriously, when you 2 are in the coffin, there are some things that need your attention. With that said, Su Tianxian took out 2 copper coins from his pocket, tied them with a red rope and hung them around my and Xia 11's necks. Wait a minute, I will separate your 2 lives and attach them to the copper coins. Remember, after you put it in the coffin, no matter what happens, don't take off the copper coins. Once you take them off, you will be lost and you will never be able to find your way back. Xia 11 and I looked at each other and saw doubts in each other's eyes. I couldn't help but ask, Master, aren't Xia 11 and I just lying in the coffin? How could we be lost? Su Tianxian explained, although your bodies are in the coffin, your souls have already entered the coffin. When I mention the coffin in the sky, I will think of the huge coffin that exists in the underworld. I don't know what's in the sky coffin. All I can do is bring you back and help you when necessary. I nodded. Su Tianxian continued, Lu Su, all you have to do is integrate the origin of Qingyang evil star into your soul. I asked again, then how can I integrate the evil star's origin into my soul? Su Tianxian looked at my right arm, and I understood instantly. Su Tianxian brought the 2 of us to the coffin and said, go in, after you integrate the source of the evil star into your soul, and let the 2 copper coins collide, the Qingyang evil star will be considered successful in entering the palace. Xia 11 and I nodded. The 2 of us lay in the coffin at once, and Wu 11 personally placed the coffin lid on the eaves of the coffin, and then slowly pushed it. Su Tianxian glanced at me and said one last thing. I'll wait for you to come back. I nodded fiercely at Su Tianxian. The coffin lid moved slowly, the last crack disappeared, and the surrounding area fell into darkness. I could clearly feel the trembling of Xia 11's delicate body. I stretched out my hand, took her soft and boneless hand, and comforted her, don't be afraid. Xia 11 hummed softly, and then I felt Xia 11's soft body keep approaching me, and finally her little head was buried deeply into my chest. Sky Coffin. Author, Qingnian Wanbao. Chapter 177. Xia 11, what are you talking about? I'm Lu Su. Xia 11's frightened voice came from the darkness. No. You're not. How could Lu Su have long hair? Long hair? I touched my hair subconsciously. It didn't matter when I touched it, it instantly made me break out in a cold sweat. My hair, which was not long, turned into silky hair. Xia 11, don't panic, something must have gone wrong. After saying this, I was stunned for a moment. This, What's going on? My voice turned into a female voice. And I seemed to have heard this female voice somewhere. I actually couldn't remember it for a while. Sia 11's voice became more and more frightened and frightened. You are not Lu Su, you are Suluo. Sia 11's words reminded me. My speaking voice at this moment is exactly the same as Suluo. You killed my sister and are you going to kill me now? Sia 11's emotions gradually started to get out of control, and she yelled at me heartbreakingly. I quickly said, Sia 11, calm down. Calm down. Don't be fooled by the surface. There must be something wrong here. It was pitch dark in the coffin, and I couldn't judge Sia 11's condition at this time. When a person is extremely scared, he will do some extreme things to vent his fear. If Sia 11's emotions are not comforted in time, it may cause a lot of trouble. I took a deep breath and continued to explain, Sia 11, calm down and think about it carefully. If I am really Suluo, how did I get here? I tried to calm Sia 11's emotions with rational analysis. But this method seems so feeble at this moment. Sia 11 couldn't listen at all. She kept repeating one sentence. You killed my sister, and now you are coming to kill me. Sia 11's emotions had obviously reached the edge of collapse. It seemed that words could no longer calm him down. The only option was to knock Sia 11 unconscious so that she would calm down. I judged from Sia 11's voice that she was curled up on the coffin wall at this moment. I tentatively stretched out my hand towards Sia 11, trying to further determine the position of Sia 11's neck. But this action completely caused Sia 11 to collapse. Do not move. Sia 11 yelled at me hoarsely. Sudden. A gloomy energy spread from Sia 11's body. Wrong. Something went wrong with Sia 11 too. She seemed to be affected by some inexplicable force and became like this. My expression condensed, and I slashed in the direction of the sound with my hand knife. I originally thought that this blow would definitely hit, but what I never expected was that Sia 11 suddenly rose up and attacked me before I could take action. I only felt my neck being pinched hard by Sia 11's hand. The feeling of suffocation came towards me. I wanted to struggle, but I found that I couldn't move. This feeling is like a ghost on the bed. Your consciousness and senses are still there, but you can't make any movements. This is terrible. Could it be possible that I could just watch Sia 11 strangle me to death? I won't let you hurt me again. I want to avenge my sister. Sia 11's hands were like iron pliers, squeezing my neck tightly. The yin energy in her body is getting heavier and heavier, which makes me more convinced that something is wrong with Sia 11. As time went by, Sia 11's strength in her hands never diminished. Due to the massive lack of oxygen, my head swelled, my mouth opened wide, and my consciousness gradually became blurred. I wanted to struggle, but the feeling of being trapped in bed still existed. Sia 11 started to laugh ferociously. Kill you. Kill you. Then I can live. Live. Finally, I lost consciousness amidst Sia 11's ferocious laughter. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 178. Tick-tock tick. A drop of cold water fell on my forehead. I opened my eyes slowly and suddenly, and another drop of water fell on my eyebrows. I struggled to sit up and looked around. This was a cave. The cave is as high as 4 or 5 stories, with large rocks on both sides and stalactites on all sides. Water drops drip down the stalactites and onto the ground. How did I get here? Where is Sia 11? I stood up, hesitated and walked out of the cave. When we walked out of the cave, our sight suddenly opened up. The bright moon hung high in the sky, and the moonlight poured down. In front of me is a vast sea of clouds, with mountains stacked on top of each other, stretching for thousands of miles. The mountains are rolling up and down, and the peaks are soaring into the sky. The scenery in front of you is so beautiful. Is this the world in the coffin? It seems to be no different from real life. Etc. I suddenly felt something was wrong. The environment here is very quiet, deathly quiet, as if you are in a dead zone. At this moment, the full moon in the sky began to change. I looked up, and the bright white slowly dissipated, replaced by scarlet blood. The blood spread to the entire full moon, and finally turned into a blood moon. The world between heaven and earth was instantly shrouded in blood, and as far as the eye could see, it was a scarlet and bloody scene. I was stunned for a moment and suddenly remembered something. The moon is red only when people see it after death. I said to myself, does that mean I'm dead? Or is my soul out of body just like last time? The scene in front of me was so weird that I had no time to think about it. The most important thing now was to find the source of the evil star and Sci-11. I looked around at the mountains not far away. What is that? My eye was drawn to a rectangular object. I looked at it carefully and was stunned for a moment. That turned out to be a coffin. No, that's not one coffin, but countless coffins. These coffins are intricately placed next to the cliff. At first glance, the densely packed coffins look like irregular grids, which is very strange. I looked up, and there were countless coffins on the cliff above my head. One of them is closest to me. So much so that I could clearly see the condition of the coffin at this moment. The coffin was very old, and the surface was slightly rotten and covered with moss. Why are there so many coffins in the sky? While I was thinking about it, I suddenly found a rugged path in the cave that led to the top. I hesitated for a moment and walked up the path. The more I walked, the more frightened I became, because this path was simply too steep. If I were not careful, I would fall into an abyss. When I reached a relatively flat environment, I stopped. There is a coffin in front of me. The distance between me and the coffin is no more than 2 meters. As long as I take one step, I can jump on top of the coffin. In order to understand everything here, I plan to take a look at the coffin. I took a deep breath, grabbed the vines on the rock wall, tentatively stretched out my feet, and then gently stepped on the coffin lid. Crunch! The coffin lid made a crisp creaking sound. I grabbed the vine and jumped onto the coffin. Fortunately, the coffin can bear my weight. But as soon as this idea emerged, a slap in the face happened. There was only a click, the coffin lid cracked, and my legs instantly fell into the coffin. I held onto the vines tightly so that I could steady myself even if I fell. The coffin is supported by 2 large wooden piles, which are very strong. At this moment, I felt as if my feet had stepped on something soft. This feeling is like a recently deceased corpse. Etc. Something seems wrong. I felt itchy on my exposed ankle, as if there were some hairs tickling me. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qingnian Wanba. Chapter 179. I suddenly broke into a cold sweat and quickly pulled my feet out by the vines. The lid of this coffin was extremely rotten and untenable, so I could only stand on the eaves. Through the blood-red moonlight, I could clearly see the situation in the coffin. There was indeed a body in the coffin. This corpse is not a human, but a cat. I couldn't tell the color of the cat because everything I looked at was blood red. I recalled the feeling just now and felt a little confused. Whether it is a human corpse or an animal corpse, it will become stiff or even rot after death for a period of time. But the body of this cat corpse was neither stiff nor decomposed. It feels like someone has just died and his body is still warm. Everything in front of me was too weird. I didn't dare to stay and quickly returned to the rugged path. At this moment, I have no clue. I don't know where to go to find Sci-11. I sighed and pursed my dry lips. A slender hair was licked into my mouth. I was stunned, spit out the hair, held it in my hand and looked at it carefully. My first reaction was Sci-11's. Because I have the most contact with her, but I don't rule out that the hair is Ruohung. If it's Sci-11's hair, then I can use the soul chasing technique and find Sci-11 directly. This would also save me a lot of time. Thinking of this, I stretched out my left hand and pinched one end of my hair. Then I bit the index finger of my right hand, then I pinched the hair with the index finger and thumb of my right hand, and then slowly pulled it with my left hand. Apply the blood from your index finger to your hair. After doing this, I made a sword gesture with my right hand and sandwiched my hair between my middle finger and index finger. Then I muttered words. After I finished reciting the final soul-chasing spell, the hair in my hand actually floated out of thin air and floated in one direction. Fortunately, the direction the hair was pointing was the rugged path, not the cliff. I followed the guidance of my hair and kept walking along the path. When I reached the end of the path, a gap in the mountains caught my eye. The gap was not big, but it was filled with coffins, and the hair finally fell on one of the coffins. I was slightly stunned. Would Sci-11 be here? I hesitated for a moment, then came to the coffin, stretched out my hand and pushed open the coffin lid. The moment the coffin lid was pushed open, I couldn't help but let out a scream. The person inside this coffin is not Sci-11 at all, but a dead hen carcass. Has the soul-chasing technique failed? I looked at the other coffins in the gap and opened them one by one. After opening it, I scratched my head in confusion. This shouldn't be the case. People are not buried in the coffin, but animals are buried. This is too strange. Yes, the coffin I opened contained animals. Pigs, dogs, cows, sheep, crows, pigeons. Strange, very strange. I came to the coffin containing the hen's body and looked at it carefully. I reached out and poked the hen's body. It was as soft as a cat's body. The soul-chasing technique failed, and I fell into confusion again. Just when I was about to leave, I suddenly felt a gaze locked on my back. I turned around suddenly and saw nothing but the corpse of the hen. It's not a good place to stay for a long time. This was my only thought. I ducked out of the gap and looked up. A familiar coffin came into my sight. Sky Coffin. Author, Ching Nian Wanbao. Chapter 180. I am very familiar with that coffin, both in terms of material and pattern. It's the double coffin. I'm so happy. I don't know why the double coffin appears here. But since the double coffin appears here, it means that the soul-suppressing coffin is also here. Thinking of this, I no longer hesitated, grabbed the vines on the cliff and climbed up. There are many vines of this kind and they are very strong. In addition to the uneven cliff, I quickly climbed to the double coffin. The double coffin is placed in the same environment as one containing an animal carcass. It is also located between the cliffs. I bent down and entered the gap, then pushed the lid of the double coffin out. With a plop, the lid of the double coffin fell to the ground. Sci-11's pretty face caught my eye. Sci-11! I shouted in surprise. But Sci-11 remained unmoved. She closed her eyes tightly, as if she had fallen asleep. I was stunned for a moment, and a bad premonition came to my mind. At this moment, I suddenly noticed the person lying next to Sci-11. That was me. Seeing this scene, I suddenly realized. In order to verify my inner suspicion, I stretched out my hand and put my middle finger and index finger under Sci-11's nose. Sure enough, no breathing. In this case, everything is explained clearly. Sci-11 and I were just out of body. As for why the double coffin and the body appear here, it is also easy to explain. The root cause of all this was the array arranged by Su Tianxian. To enter the celestial coffin, one must be in the soul state. And Su Tianxian extracted our souls, and then used the magic circle to transfer our bodies into the sky coffin. If I remember correctly, The magic circle is called soul extraction and body transfer. Using the magic circle as a guide and the coffin as the mouth, the two of us are transported here. The double coffin in real life still exists, and this double coffin is the passage connecting real life and the celestial coffin. I looked at my body and let out a long sigh of relief. Then he stretched out his right hand and activated the soul-stealing blood hand. Scarlet blood instantly spread to my entire arm. Just when I wanted to re-enter my body through my bloody hands, a black shadow struck me and entered my body before me. Before I could react, I saw my body slowly opening its eyes, opening its mouth slightly and letting out the low roar of a wild wolf. I looked shocked. I was actually killed by a wolf. Rub 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 rub. I actually jumped out of the coffin. I got down on all fours, his eyes became very ferocious, and he bared his teeth and growled at me. I don't know what words to use to describe my mood at this moment. The other you is lying on the ground in the posture of a wolf, grinning at you. This feeling is terrible. The I who had been seized by the wolf leaned forward, as if he was about to pounce at any time. My expression condensed, and I rushed in front of me in one stride. I, possessed by the wolf soul, dodged aside. I missed the blow and continued to confront the wolf soul. It was so afraid of my right hand that it didn't dare to attack. Fortunately, the wolf can't climb, so it can't leave this gap. As long as I seize the opportunity to separate the wolf soul from my body, then I can take back my body. I stretched out my blood-covered right hand in front of me and formed a seal of the 9 layers of thunder dew. In an instant, thunder and lightning flashed in my palm. What surprised me was that the blood on my right arm spread to the lightning. The blue thunder and lightning turned into blood red.